Police digging under a house in Des Plaines, Illinois, found 4 more bodies today. The owner of the house, a man named John Wayne Gacy, is suspected of having killed as many as 32 teenage boys and burying most of them under and around his house and garage.
But this story, of course, is far from over. Investigators know there are bodies or parts of bodies still to be dug out of this muddy crawl space.
A gruesome story leads off our newscast.
Milwaukee police found body parts in a North Side apartment, and now they wonder if they've uncovered some kind of death factory. This was the scene earlier this morning. Police hired a private contractor to haul a refrigerator and a tank of acid out of the apartment in the 900 block of North 25th Street. Because of the acid, some neighbors were evacuated briefly. Police found parts of bodies, leading them to believe the man they arrested is a mass murderer.
Milwaukee, July 1991. A police car running late on a routine call. A man in handcuffs on the sidewalk, bleeding, terrified, speaking in fragments no one understands yet. Inside the apartment, a smell the officers will describe for the rest of their lives. Photographs, a freezer. 2 states away, 13 years earlier, Chicago, December 1978, a missing boy's mother calling police for the 3rd time in a week. A contractor's name comes up, a file already sitting on a detective's desk, a crawl space no one has checked yet. 2 men, 2 decades apart, 2 cities that both had a chance to stop them long before anyone did. One was invisible, quiet, isolated, easy to overlook. The other was impossible to miss, a business owner, a photograph with a first lady, a man who threw parties for his neighbor's kids. Neither should have gotten as far as he did. Tonight, which one got further and why the system that was supposed to stop them failed in 2 completely different ways. This channel breaks down how killers operated and, more importantly, how they were caught. Side by side, case by case. If that's what you're here for, subscribe. It helps more than you'd think. Start in Chicago. By the mid-1970s, John Wayne Gacy is not a man anyone would look at twice, and that's by design. He runs a successful contracting business, PDM Contractors, with dozens of employees passing through it every year. He's active in local Democratic politics, well known enough to be photographed with a sitting First Lady at a charity event. He organizes elaborate neighborhood block parties, complete with rented equipment and hundreds of guests. He performs at children's hospitals and community events dressed as a clown he calls Pogo, an identity he built himself and clearly enjoyed inhabiting. His crews call him demanding but fair, the kind of boss who put in as many hours as anyone under him. Neighbors just call him generous, if a little intense. He is, on paper, exactly the kind of man a community trusts. And that trust is not incidental, it's functional. Gacy builds it deliberately, brick by brick, and it will do more to protect him than anything he does in private ever could. He has already been convicted once, in Iowa, for sexually assaulting a teenage boy, the son of one of his employees. He's sentenced to 10 years. He serves 18 months before parole, and by the time he resettles in Chicago and rebuilds his life there, that record is quiet, distant, filed away in another state. One bad chapter, as far as anyone in his new life knows. Now, Milwaukee, a different city and a very different kind of man. Jeffrey Dahmer grows up isolated, even inside his own family, awkward around other kids from an early age, a drinking problem that starts in high school and never really lets go of him. He enlists in the army hoping for structure, and it doesn't take. He's discharged early, officially for alcohol abuse, before his first overseas posting is even finished. He moves in with his grandmother in Wisconsin for a while, then eventually out on his own into a modest apartment building where neighbors mostly keep to themselves and complaints, when they happen, get resolved with an apology and a closed door. He has one prior conviction, too, for sexually assaulting and drugging a 13-year-old boy in 1988. He's sentenced to probation and a work release program. He serves less than a year. Where Gacy is visible, a name people know, a face people trust, a man with a seat at the table, Dahmer is the opposite. He works night shifts at a chocolate factory. He keeps odd, unpredictable hours. He drinks alone. Nobody organizes a block party around Jeffrey Dahmer, and nobody particularly wants to. That contrast is what this whole comparison hangs on. One man hid in plain sight, using respectability and public visibility as camouflage. The more people who knew him, the safer he was. The other hid by disappearing, by becoming exactly the kind of person a system and a neighborhood stops paying close attention to. Both approaches worked for years longer than they should have, and by the time either man is finally stopped, the list of people who could have stopped him sooner is long enough to make the "how did nobody notice" question far less interesting than the "why didn't anyone act" question. Gacy's first killing happens in 1972. His last happens in December 1978. In between, by his own admission and by the count investigators eventually reach, he kills at least 33 young men and boys, most of them lured through his contracting business or found through the city's networks of runaways and young men looking for work. His method of operation barely changes across 6 years: an offer of work or money, a card trick or a set of handcuffs presented as a joke, and then a level of control the victim can't undo. Many of his victims are reported missing. Some of those reports name Gacy directly, in writing, years before he's ever arrested. In 1972, a young man reports being assaulted by Gacy. No charges follow. In 1975, another young man makes the same claim, this time with more detail. Gacy is questioned and released. In 1976, a third complaint, same result. Complaints keep accumulating through the mid-1970s. Assault allegations, missing persons reports that trace directly back to his contracting jobs, even a formal warning passed to police by an attorney representing a client who worked for Gacy and then disappeared. Each one taken on its own gets treated as isolated. Nobody connects them into a pattern. Nobody pulls the file and lines the names up. Part of that is Gacy's own construction, working exactly as intended. He's polite and cooperative with police whenever they do show up at his door. He has an explanation ready, delivered calmly, in the voice of a man who pays his taxes and knows people at City Hall. He's a business owner, a familiar face at the precinct fundraiser, someone who has shaken hands with officers at community events. The instinct to take his word over a runaway teenager's or a missing employee's families is not an accident of bad luck. It's exactly what his public identity was engineered to produce. Dahmer's pattern looks nothing like this on the surface, but it's riddled with just as many missed chances, arguably more, because at least one of them happens directly in front of police officers in real time, with a chance to end everything right there. In May 1991, a 14-year-old boy, one of Dahmer's intended victims, manages to get out of his apartment. He's disoriented, drugged, bleeding, found wandering the street by two women who immediately call police. Officers arrive. Dahmer meets them at the scene, calm and cooperative, and tells them the boy is his adult boyfriend, that this is nothing more than a domestic dispute between two grown men. The officers walk the boy back into Dahmer's apartment themselves, with Dahmer leading the way. They do not check the boy's identification. They do not run Dahmer's name, which would have turned up his prior conviction of assaulting a minor. They do not search the apartment where evidence of other victims is present. They leave. That boy is killed within hours of being returned to the apartment the officers walked him back into. It is the single most preventable moment in either case, and it isn't close. This wasn't a report buried in a drawer somewhere, or a pattern nobody yet had the tools to connect. Two officers stood in the doorway and handed him back, made worse by the fact that one of the women who placed the original call tried repeatedly to tell those officers who the boy was and wasn't believed. Race and class shape both of these failures in mirrored but opposite ways. Gacy's respectability, his whiteness, his business ownership, his political connections, his standing as a tax-paying pillar of his community bought him a level of credibility police extended to him almost automatically, again and again, across years. Dahmer's victims, several of them young Black and Asian men, were disbelieved and deprioritized by officers who assumed the worst about the victims and the best about the calm white man standing in front of them. Different mechanisms entirely. Same result on both sides of this comparison. Years added to each man's timeline that never should have existed, and a body count that grew directly out of decisions other people made, not just decisions either killer made alone. If you're looking for the single moment either case should have ended, both men hand you one, almost like an evidence exhibit built for this exact comparison. For Gacy, it's late 1978, only months before his actual arrest. A missing young man's family goes to police with something concrete this time, Gacy's name, tied directly to their son's last known movements and last known employer, plus a growing, overlapping list of other families describing the exact same pattern of a job offer that ended in disappearance. Investigators finally pull his full record and find the Iowa conviction sitting right there. They get a search warrant. They walk through his house, room by room. They smell something they can't explain away as plumbing or a dead animal in the walls. And they don't push further that day. The warrant is narrow. The smell isn't enough on its own yet, and Gacy is composed enough in the moment to talk his way through it. For Dahmer, the false resolution sits earlier that same year, the incident with the 14-year-old boy in May. Two officers standing in the very apartment where his victims were being drugged and killed, with the person he intended to kill next standing right in front of them, disoriented and bleeding. It does not get closer to a resolution than that moment. Every piece needed to end this is already present in that hallway, and it still doesn't resolve. Neither case ends here. Both men walk back into their ordinary lives for a little while longer, Gacy for a matter of weeks, Dahmer for a matter of months, not because the evidence wasn't there, but because the people standing closest to it didn't push the last few feet to reach it. Gacy's end comes fast once it finally starts. Investigators return to his house with a fuller warrant, this time prepared to dig. Under the crawl space, they find the first remains within hours, then more, in numbers that force them to bring in additional investigators and equipment just to keep the recovery organized. By the time the count is finished, 29 bodies are recovered from the crawl space and the rest of the property, with 4 more pulled from the Des Plaines River where he dumped them once the crawl space ran out of room. He's arrested in December 1978, convicted in 1980, and executed in 1994. From that first ignored assault complaint in 1975 to his arrest in 1978, roughly 3 years where police had his name on record tied to specific allegations and did nothing decisive with it. Dahmer's end comes from an scope, not an investigation. In July 1991, another intended victim gets free, still wearing one handcuff, and flags down a passing police car himself rather than trusting anyone to come find him. This time, the responding officers don't send him back. Something about the moment, maybe the handcuff, maybe the man's own insistence, make them follow the trail back to Dahmer's apartment themselves. Inside, they find what's inside: photographs, remains, and the full scope of what had been happening in that building for years. He's arrested that night, convicted in 1992, and killed by a fellow inmate in prison in 1994. From the earliest genuinely missed opportunity, that domestic dispute call in May of that same year, just weeks before his actual arrest, though neighbor complaints about smells and strange noises stretch back further still, to his capture, a shorter window on paper than Gacy's, with a failure at the very end so direct, so avoidable, that it's hard to call it anything other than a choice made by two specific people. So which one was harder to catch? By the numbers, Gacy evaded detection through a longer accumulation of specific, named complaints, years of them tied directly to his identity, filed and shelved by different officers at different times, none of whom connected the dots to the ones before. Dahmer's failures were fewer in raw count, but arguably more damning individually because the closest one happened with 2 police officers standing inside the room where it mattered. If harder to catch means the system genuinely had less to work with, Dahmer is the stronger case. His isolation, his lack of a public profile, and his selection of victims from communities police were less inclined to prioritize all made him structurally harder to trace. Nobody was looking for men that almost nobody in a position of authority thought to take seriously as missing. If it means the system had what it needed and simply failed to act on it, Gacy is the clearer case, and it isn't close. He was reported by name, with specifics, years before anyone acted on any of it. Neither man was hard to catch because he was clever. Both were missed because the people meant to catch them decided again and again across years and in a doorway not to look closely enough at what was already right in front of them.
Both of these men were eventually stopped, and not by brilliant detective work. A boy managed to get free and flag down a car himself. A family kept calling long after most people would have given up. The system's specifically built to catch people like this. Trained officers, standing procedures, a legal record for both men that already existed on paper didn't do it. Not fast enough, not carefully enough. Ordinary people refusing to look away when it would have been easier to are the actual reason either case ended when it did. Every name that appears in a case like this belongs to someone, a son, a neighbor, someone who was reported missing by a family that kept pushing, or someone who was never taken seriously enough to be reported at all. That's the part worth remembering longer than either of these 2 names. If you want the next one in this series, Bundy versus BTK, 2 of the most methodical killers America has ever produced, it's coming soon. Subscribe if you don't want to miss it.